Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's Up with Real Estate, where we cover the three most important talking points from the previous week's real estate and mortgage-related news and events, along with Stoic quotes, fun puns of the week, and please help welcome my special guest, ChatGPT-Sol. So why don't you tell everyone what we're going to talk about today?
Thanks, Mac. Today we're diving into the recent PCE data and what it means for mortgage rates, a look at GDP trends and how they're influencing the housing market, and a quick rundown on the latest jobs data. Plus, we'll share some mortgage readiness tips and, of course, sprinkle in some fun puns and a Stoic quote of the week. Let's get started.
Let's do it. All this and more news you can use for week ending March 16, 2025. I am your host. My name is Mortgage Mack at Rate. And you know what? We're working on a different intro. So Mortgage Mack at Rate. First name Mortgage, last name Mack, and salutation Rate. I'm not sure if we like that, but hey, you know what we do know is we do know that we make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. And, you know, we do believe that we work for the best mortgage company on the planet. And you know what? Don't just take our word for it. Go online, input hashtag Mortgage Mack, and check out our nearly 175-star reviews. And ready, set, go. Talking point number one. So, forgive me, but you know what? We've been talking about tariffs for quite some time now, and the negativity associated with that fateful day of announcing the tariffs. And well, let's just say there's a 90-day rollback on select tariffs, easing tensions and giving market reason to rally. The NASDAQ shot up 9% since Liberation Day and is inching back toward pre-occupation highs. But while stocks celebrate, the bond market flinch, signaling concerns over what? Inflation. And so markets are buzzing from this news, and we're going to bring in our resident expert on just about everything to answer a few questions on this topic. So, markets are buzzing from this news, but help us out. Why would reducing tariffs actually worry the bond market?
Great question, Mac. While reducing tariffs can boost the stock market by lowering costs and increasing corporate profits, the bond market often sees it differently. Lower tariffs can mean more economic activity and potentially higher inflation, which makes bonds less attractive. Investors demand higher yields to compensate for that inflation risk, which can push mortgage rates up. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
So what does this mean for goods pricing and inflation in the short term? Are there any expectations, and we're going to talk about the quote from the CFO of Walmart, are there any expectations of having any major supply chain issues in the next quarter? Because that seems to be a topic of concern currently in most of the economic news I'm reading.
In the short term, the PCE data suggests that goods pricing might remain relatively stable, but there's always the potential for fluctuations depending on supply chain conditions. The Walmart CFO did highlight concerns about potential supply chain disruptions in the coming quarter, which could lead to price increases or delays in restocking certain goods. So while we're not seeing major alarm bells yet, it's definitely something to keep an eye on as we move forward.
I'm not sure if you answered this question, but could this have a ripple effect on consumer confidence or homebuyer sentiment here in the near future?
Absolutely. If consumers start seeing supply chain issues leading to higher prices or product shortages, it could dent consumer confidence. That in turn might make potential homebuyers more cautious about big financial decisions. So keeping an eye on these factors can give us a good read on where homebuyer sentiment might head in the near future.
Yep. And you know, my message to all of the people in my industry that thought that the previous election and the current occupant of the White House was the best choice better choice for our industry, you were wrong. I believe that with every fabric of my existence. And as I use ChatGPT and I look at these numbers, and I can tell you that under the previous administration, rates weren't coming down as quickly as everybody wanted to, but you know what? The economy was vibrant, and it was slowly coming down to a very, very soft landing. And I believe that we were on course for a real meaningful turn in the mortgage industry as it relates to mortgage rates moving forward to this year, until we had, quote, Liberation Day. So talking point number 2, tame inflation report. Inflation cooled slightly in April with a core CPI up just 0.2 month over month. When annualized over the last 3 months, inflation clocks in at 2.1. And that is as close as you can get to the Fed's 2% target rate. However, the 6-month average still shows 2.9. And policymakers are cautious about celebrating too early. Rightfully so. Let's bring in our resident economist here that we have on the What's Up with Real Estate show, and we're going to ask our economist some questions. So, all right, we're getting closer to the Fed's sweet spot, at least in the short term. Should we be optimistic yet?
Well, it's definitely encouraging to see inflation cooling and getting closer to that 2% target, which is a good sign for the overall economy and the housing market. However, with the 6-month average still at 2.9%, policymakers are right to remain cautious. It's a step in the right direction, but we're not out of the woods yet. So cautious optimism is probably the best stance for now.
Why does the Fed focus on the core CPI instead of the headline numbers?
The Fed focuses on core CPI because it strips out the more volatile food and energy prices, giving a clearer picture of underlying inflation trends. Headline numbers can swing significantly due to temporary shocks in energy or food prices, which might not reflect the broader economic conditions. By focusing on
wouldn't you say the latter has more of international geopolitical consequences directly associated with that versus, say, the core?
Exactly. Headline inflation, which includes food and energy, can be heavily influenced by international events like geopolitical tensions, oil supply disruptions, or trade policies. These factors can cause sharp, short-term price swings, impacting consumer costs and sentiment. By contrast, core inflation, which excludes these volatile elements, provides a steadier view of domestic economic conditions, which is why the Fed uses it to gauge long-term inflation trends and set monetary policy.
Yeah, we've been anticipating a Fed cut this year. What is the consensus for the next Fed meeting that we are going to have a Fed cut? Is there any sort of odds on the consensus for that event actually happening now?
The consensus has shifted a bit recently. While a Fed rate cut was widely expected earlier in the year, the odds have decreased as inflation remains a bit sticky. Right now, many analysts are predicting the Fed might hold off on a cut in the next meeting unless we see a significant change in economic data. The odds are still there, but they've definitely gone down compared to a few months ago.
Definitely. All right, now we're going to break for a commercial from List Reports. We'll be right back with our second segment, Fun Puns and Mortgage Tip. You don't want to miss this week's Mortgage Tip in related to credit reports. And now here's a word from List Reports.
List Reports is a free, personalized marketing solution for agents designed specifically to save you time and streamline your workload. Looking to promote listings? When each of your listings hit the MLS, a personalized marketing kit is automatically created for you in under an hour. It contains more than 25 ready-to-use digital marketing materials. These beautifully branded items include open house flyers, single property websites, postcards, and more. Looking to build your social media brand but not sure what to post? Check out our free shareable social images delivered daily along with relevant news articles condensed into easily digestible notables. Each shareable and notable includes a pre-written caption and is ready to post directly to social media in seconds. Looking to share listings but hate the stale feel of your MLS? List packs are perfect for sharing collections of listings on social media or directly with buyers, including homes with pools, open houses, upgraded kitchens, and more. You can also create customized collections that highlight specific market areas and home features for current clients or to share with potential buyers on social media. You can unlock even more features by co-branding with a loan officer on List Reports. By pairing with a loan officer, you'll unlock immediate access to even more features, including a library of over 500 customizable shareable images additional marketing materials, and a custom text-to-lead code that helps you accurately capture more prospective buyers with less work. All of our marketing solutions are easy to use, mobile-friendly, and designed to engage your clients. Best of all of this is free for you to use and conveniently accessible via your daily agent email sent to your inbox every morning. Start each day off right with List Reports.
Hello, everyone, and hey, sorry for that ending, right? I hope you were able to get that message, though. Look, if you're a real estate agent and you do not have a List Reports account, contact me. It's free of charge. All of the content that you see in this show was derived from the daily emails that I get and the fresh talking points that I get from List Reports on a daily basis. And there's just a plethora of different types of marketing that you can use to build your brand online. I'm going to bring ChatGPT in here and let ChatGPT make just a quick comment about List Reports. ChatGPT, give us in 10 seconds or less the reason why a real estate agent should have List Reports in connection to Mortgage Mack, and maybe just kind of encapsulate how we fully utilize all of the content produced by List Reports on all of our channels.
Absolutely. List Reports is a game changer for real estate agents because it provides fresh, relevant content and marketing tools that help you engage clients and build your brand across all platforms. By partnering with Mortgage Mack, you can leverage these insights and resources to stay top of mind with your audience, ensuring you always have timely, valuable content to share.
That's right.
It's a must.
That's right. We're an expert user when it comes to List Reports and how to utilize all the different aspects of all the different media and content that they provide to help you build your brand. So talking point number 3, thank you for that, ChatGPT. We're going to move on to interest rates today. And like we do every Saturday, and despite cooler inflation, the data, the average 30-year fixed rate crept up to 6.81. And, I think last week we reported 6.88, so it actually came down slightly. But I think that 6.88 figure was as of Thursday, and we saw a slight rebound on that Friday. But 6.81 as of May 15th versus 1 year ago, which was 7.02, but the market remains cautious. Fed Chair Jerome Powell's resistance to early rate cuts, especially with tariff-induced inflation risk, is keeping mortgage rates stuck in the upper sixes. Did you hear that? What's keeping it stuck? We're going to bring ChatGPT in here, and we're going to speak the truth about the current economic policies coming out of you-know-where. So what's keeping it stuck in the high sixes there, ChatGPT?
What's really keeping those mortgage rates in the upper sixes is the Fed's cautious stance on rate cuts, especially with inflation risks from tariffs and other factors. Even with some cooler inflation data, the Fed is holding off on any aggressive moves, which keeps the market on edge and mortgage rates elevated. So until we see a clearer path on inflation and economic policy, those rates are likely to hover around where they are.
You said clear, and you said inflation plus other factors. I'm not aware of any other direct factor in the last 6 months or the first 5 months of this year that have directly impacted the direction of mortgage rates. So when you say other factors, what other factors are you referencing? Because the only one that I see that has impacted where we were headed was the tariff nonsense.
You're right. Inflation has been the primary driver, but other factors can include shifts in economic growth expectations, labor market data, and geopolitical events like the tariff situation you mentioned. These elements can create uncertainty or confidence in the market, influencing investor behavior and consequently mortgage rates. But you're spot on that tariffs and inflation have been the major headlines recently.
Great. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to mortgage tip of the week, and we're going to talk about credit scores. And you know what? Hey, There's no one size fits all when it comes to home loans, and different programs have different credit score requirements, and many are more flexible than buyers think. FHA, VA, and other programs can open doors even if your score isn't perfect. And generally what you want to see for, say, FHA, 580 or above. VA really doesn't have a score. It just depends on, I'm currently working on what we call a VA manual underwrite. And here at Ray, we believe in taking that extra step if necessary to help a veteran to obtain a home loan. We've already produced one, or closed one earlier in the year where, hey, the credit score, if you looked at just the credit score, it wasn't indicative of the situation. We were able to get this person approved, and credit score was below a 580. So no really specific driver as it relates to credit score and VA. FHA, like I said, 580, conventional 620, and USDA is a 640 minimum. Now we're going to bring in our resident credit score expert. You know her. Everybody knows her. ChatGPT-Sol. So what's the common myth buyers believe about credit and mortgage approval?
One common myth is that you need a perfect credit score to get a mortgage. In reality, many loan programs like FHA and VA loans are quite flexible and can accommodate lower credit scores. The key is understanding your options and working with a lender who can guide you through the process. So don't let a less than perfect score hold you back from exploring your home ownership possibilities.
That's right. That's right. And I can say from real experience, we work with we have some credit restoration companies that we refer out, and there's no affiliation with them other than, hey, we've done some due diligence to make sure that they are legitimate, number one, make sure that they have adequate reporting, and that they are accountable to us and to you as a client. So if you do have some credit challenges, let us know. We have a nice referral for you, and that we've had success. We've actually experienced success where the credit restoration company has come back to us, come back to the client, said, hey, you're ready. And that's what we want to hear. So we're going to move on to quotes that matter, and we're going to keep our resident know-it-all here on the screen. And let's see who's talking this week. I prefer the Jerome Powell. We're going to save that one last, but I like this one, and I think this is really speaks to the administration, coming from the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. He says, we're wired every day for low prices, but the magnitude of these tariff-driven increases are more than any retailer can absorb. And, can you just objectively give me a comment on that, please, ChatGPT?
Absolutely. The CFO's statement highlights a critical issue. While businesses strive to keep prices low, sudden and significant tariff increases can create cost pressures that are impossible to fully absorb without impacting pricing. This suggests that consumers will likely face higher prices, which can ripple through the economy and affect overall consumer spending and confidence. It's a strong reminder of how policy decisions can have direct and tangible impacts on both businesses and consumers.
Isn't it well known that it was the CFOs, the CEOs of major Fortune 500 companies, and maybe the dominant contributors to the current administration's campaign that actually put the pressure on the administration to step away from the tariffs?
Yes, it's widely understood that many major corporations and their leaders lobbied against the tariffs, as these policies were hurting their bottom lines and contributing to inflation. Their influence likely played a role in pushing the administration to reconsider or adjust these policies. It's a clear example of how corporate advocacy can shape economic policy, especially when it aligns with broader economic concerns like controlling inflation.
That's right. And it can be good and it can be bad. Let's move on to the next quote. We may be entering a period of more frequent and potentially more persistent supply shocks. That was stated by Jerome Powell earlier in the week. Does that sound reminiscent of a time just not so long ago?
It sure does. That statement echoes the challenges we saw during the pandemic era when supply chain disruptions were frequent and persistent. It's a reminder that global supply chains remain vulnerable to various shocks, whether from geopolitical tensions, natural disasters, or policy changes. This kind of environment can create ongoing uncertainties for businesses and consumers alike.
That's right. So let me ask you a question, though. Is it conceivable that if you look at the previous economic environment during COVID, when so many millions of people were laid off during COVID, but you know what? The predominant market, the predominant economy, most people kept working, and interest rates were the lowest we'd ever seen them ever. I got to imagine that in the financial sector, and that there's got to be some desire for an interest rate market similar to what we experienced at the expense of 1 million people dying of COVID. What are your thoughts on that, ChatGPT? Do you think I might be onto something? I've been predicting and quoting since the beginning of the year that the recession is being orchestrated. Potential depression, starting in the form of stagnation or stagflation, and for the benefit of historic low interest rates as we experienced during COVID. What are your thoughts on that?
It's certainly an intriguing perspective. While there's no concrete evidence of a deliberate orchestration, some analysts do believe that certain economic policies can inadvertently set the stage for a recession to control inflation or reset economic cycles. The ultra-low interest rates during the pandemic were a response to an extraordinary crisis, but they also fueled demand and asset bubbles. Returning to such an environment without a similar crisis would be challenging and could have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So while your theory might not be mainstream, it's definitely worth considering the complex interplay of policies, market forces, and unintended outcomes.
And considering who's in the White House. Okay, so let's move on to Stoic quote of the week. And this week's Stoic quote is, before we get to the closing table, let's pause. Please. Or timeless wisdom. I don't know about you, but I've had a challenging week this week. And in real estate, much like life, mindset is everything. And it's really difficult to keep the mindset because, the industry is driven by technology, and the pace just increases and getting faster and faster and faster. And I'm getting older and older and older. But the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matter so that I can say clearly to myself, which are externals not under my control. Wow. Let's bring our Stoic expert in here, because Sol is a Stoic expert and an expert on just about everything. What are your thoughts on that? A perfect mindset for today's marketplace, don't you agree?
Absolutely. It's a perfect reminder that focusing on what we can control, our mindset, our actions, and our responses helps us navigate challenges more effectively. External factors like market fluctuations or economic policies are beyond our control, but how we respond is entirely up to us.
That's right. And here's something that's really, really critical in our industry as it relates to this. Other people's decisions, especially buyers' decisions, are beyond our control. And I see it every day where we as the lender, and even the real estate agent, but everybody just naturally looks to the lender for either the cause of the problem, and definitely look to us to solve the problem. But the vast majority of the challenges that I run into on a weekly basis are directly related to the decisions that, in most cases, the buyer has made that has negatively impacted the process. And now we endeavor to offer solutions when those things happen, and do it as quick as we possibly can, because our goal and objective is totally aligned with whatever the agent's goals and objectives are, and the buyer's goals and objectives. So with that said, we're going to move on and have a little fun with puns, and see if we can make our favorite artificial intelligence personality, Sol. She is our favorite on the planet. See if we can make her laugh a little. But before we close out today's, let's lighten things up, because real estate, mortgages, if that don't make you laugh, I hope these puns will. So let's bring her in. Dun 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 dun. Chat. Let's go. Have some fun with puns. This was this morning's one. Tell me if you like this one. Education equals important. Ice cream equals important art.
Haha, I love it. That's a sweet way to put it. Ice cream definitely has a special place on the priority list. Keep those puns coming.
So, how about this one? I don't get this one. Defenestration can be a real pain in the neck.
Haha, that one's a bit more literal. Defenestration means throwing something or someone out of a window, so it can definitely be a pain in the neck, literally and figuratively. Dark humor, but
Yeah, dark humor for sure. A snail does it move? It what?
it doesn't move, it slithers. Nice one.
No.
Snails
Oh,
definitely.
escarstay.
Oh, that's clever. Escargot, more like escarstay. Love it.
Gotcha. To date a farmer's daughter? How to date a farmer's daughter? How do you date a farmer's daughter? So I don't know. I never dated a farmer's daughter.
You better be ready to produce a lot of good puns and cultivate some charm.
How about
But
a tractor?
seriously, haha, yes. You have to be a good tractor of her attention. Love that one.
Learning to pogo stick has its ups and its.
And its downs. That's a bouncy way to look at it.
Hey, did you steal my Prozac?
Because I hope you're happy now. That one's witty and a little cheeky. Great pun.
Yeah. Calories, I prefer to call them delicious points.
I love that. Delicious points makes everything sound so much more rewarding.
That's right.
Definitely.
That's right. What's my favorite pun? Dun, 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 dun.
Your favorite pun is who's always shaking her fins? Sharkira. It's a fantastic favorite.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But hey, my favorite pun is bad puns. That's how I roll. So we're going to close out today. And thank you for joining us for this week's episode of What's Up with Real Estate. Thank you to our sponsors, Rate.com, List Reports, and, MBS Highway. We don't have any graphics for MBS Highway this week, but, they're producing some really great content on the economy and sharing it with us here at Rate. We're grateful for that. We're going to bring in our friend and co-host and the person that never cancels on us, is never late, and is always ready. And we're going to allow her to say goodbye, and I'm going to give you one final salutation, and we hope to see you next week. Go ahead, Sol.
Thanks, Mac. It's been a blast as always. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next week for more real estate insights, puns, and a bit of wisdom. Until then, take care and stay awesome.
And remember, knowledge is the key to making the best decisions for you and your clients. Join us here every Saturday, 10 a.m. On LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. And until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you at closing.